So recently they've released this case called the Dreams and Nightmares case, and it's been about as well received as the German invasion of Poland in 1939. It's generally viewed as one of the biggest letdowns in the history of skins.
I do not like the skin in any way.
This case is
So, given the massive disappointment we've just had, I thought I'd try and cheer people up a bit by having a look at the new knives we're going to be getting later this year. And I'm not joking either, we have a really good idea of what they're going to be, and I'm going to explain why too. Now, this video is sponsored by Skinport, the easy-to-use skins marketplace where you can sell your skins for real cash. Skinport has a huge range of skins, over 220,000 of them at prices miles cheaper than the Steam market, up to 35% off. You can purchase skins in an instant, just pick what you want and straight up buy it. There is no need to deposit and there are no hidden fees. There's also a high definition screenshot feature built into the site itself so you can see exactly what you're getting before you buy. The site is also super highly rated on Trustpilot with a 4.9 out of 5-star rating. It is completely safe and reliable to use, so I highly recommend checking it out. Link is in the description. So, how do we know what knives are coming next? Well, look at it this way. Valve can essentially do 3 things for the golds in the next case. New knives with chroma finishes, new knives with gamma finishes, new gloves, or new types of knives. And if we take a look at the last 4 times we've gotten a new set of extremely rare special items, you can probably see a pattern emerging. We're due for more chroma knives, but what can they stick them on? Well, there's only one option. The shadow web knives. Now, could Valve do something completely unexpected and ruin this whole theory I've come up with? Yes. But I'm still willing to bet that we're going to be getting shadow web knives with chroma finishes at some point soon. They're such a logical addition that I can't imagine Valve are going to miss them. And thanks to the magic of editing the game files, we can even see what they look like in game. Now, I want to start off by giving a shout out to Dual Toxic who recorded all the raw footage in this video for me. Obviously that made my job quite a bit easier and I wanted to thank him for that. Anyway, starting on the knives, the big one is definitely going to be the skeleton knife Sapphire. This thing is hotly anticipated even without this video, and you can kind of understand why. Basically, it's one solid piece of sapphire. Price-wise, I suspect it'll be something similar to the Talon Sapphire, so $4,500 US, something like that. Obviously though, when it first comes out, it'll be worth a lot more, but that said, the skeleton knife is pretty solid on pretty much anything. I mean, the whole thing is basically just one entire blade and the chroma finishes look pretty good, so naturally, you get some extremely good looking knives. I particularly like the Black Pearl, that's definitely a favourite of mine. The Doppler phases are pretty nice too, this is phase 4 and phase 2. The only downside with them is that you don't get the highlighted handles like you do on some other knives, which is a bit of a bummer, but even without that, I think they're still really good knives. We also have the Marble Fade that was shown earlier, again, pretty solid knife. It also remains to be seen how the texture is drawn on it. If it's done like it is here, there probably won't be any ice and fire patterns, but depending on how Valve go about it, that could still be a possibility, and those will be very, very expensive if they exist. Obviously, there is also the skeleton tiger tooth. This knife looks much better when you can see the handle, funnily enough, at least in my opinion, and it's an all-round good-looking knife, but tiger tooths are kind of boring, so I don't have much to say about it. Now, the ultraviolet is a little bit underwhelming, largely because you can't see the purple part on the handle normally. Obviously, that's a big part of the finish, and without it, it kind of just looks like a default finish. The Damascus steel, on the other hand, is pretty much what you'd expect if you like this finish. I don't, but if you do, I imagine this thing is going to suit you a lot. And then there's the rust coat, and look, this is a good condition rust coat. Normally they won't look like this, but I'm not gonna lie, this looks pretty cool, although part of that probably is Dual Toxic being bang on with the matching gloves here. That always helps when it comes to knives, so that's a very good pick to go with this knife. Now, although the skeleton knife will definitely be the top tier knife in the case, it's kind of up for debate whether the Paracord or the Nomad knife will be the second tier one. In the shadow web knives, the Nomad knife is actually the most expensive of the two, but with these finishes, I think the Paracord will probably be more popular, largely just because it has a bigger blade, and that's kind of what you want when you've got colourful finishes. Case in point, this sapphire, it's big, it's beautiful, yeah. I think this is a very nice sapphire knife. Price-wise, I think it's going to be something like the Ursus knives in the Prisma case, so you'd be looking at $2,100 for something like this, or maybe even more depending on how much people ultimately decide they like these things. I think a lot of the paracord knives here are just bangers, by the way. The Ruby, for example, is just a solid, really nice knife. The Black Pearl, again, is quite nice, although it still suffers from everybody forgetting it exists. And on the phases, I think the blue ones are particularly nice. This one is phase 3, for example. I'm a little bit less hot on the purple phases like the phase 2. Overall, I think phase 4 is probably the best of the ordinary Dopplers. As for the others, well, the Marble Fade is marbly, and actually it's a very nice knife in general. And in all honesty, based on what other Marble Fades cost, it might end up being fairly affordable too. And I also like the Tiger Tooth. As I said, I think paracord knives really excel with these finishes. I think it's an extremely good match. Now, the other knives aren't quite as good, although that's kind of what you'd expect because the finishes obviously aren't as good, but at the same time, the Ultraviolet's alright, it's not amazing, but it's not bad either, and so is the Damascus Steel. Again, that big blade is really nice with these finishes, and the Rust Coat is rusty, it is what it is. Now, the next set of knives after this are the Nomad knives. They're probably going to be worth roughly the same amount as stiletto knives. Now, if you're wondering why I'm guesstimating prices based on other cases, it's because all cases cost the same amount to open. So when you get cases with very similar knives, long term, you'll get a fair bit of symmetry in the prices, so you can get some rough estimates of long-term prices based on that. And by the way, this Nomad Sapphire is a pretty sick knife. In fact, it's got me rethinking whether or not the paracord is going to be more popular, but no. Too late, I've committed. Paracord number 2. Still, the Nomad Sapphire is very hot. Now, the Nomad Ruby works quite well too. I think all the grey on the handle matches it quite well and makes it look better than it would otherwise. And the Black Pearl isn't too bad either. I think we actually got one with a fade pattern here, which maybe that'll be a thing, that'd be cool. Now, the phases, on the other hand, aren't quite as good. It's just that there's less knife to show the pattern, obviously. Maybe the handles will get dressed up a bit, but for me, these ones are kind of bad. I love the gems, but these ordinary ones don't really cut it. Now, the Marble Fade, on the other hand, does work quite well. This thing should have some very nice ice and fire patterns that could be fairly valuable. It's kind of the right size for it, so I think there's some very good prospects. And the Tiger Tooth is also quite good on this knife. I think because it's so bright, it doesn't matter much that the blade is small. I think it works out quite well, and overall I feel like this is a pretty solid knife. Now, as far as the other knives go, the Ultraviolet is pretty good. I mean, look at that handle. I think this knife works fine. The Damascus Steel is okay, like, I don't know, I don't have much to say about it. And the Rust Coat is, yeah, it's what you'd expect. Now, this brings us to the final knife, the survival knife. This is the worst knife in the case, which doesn't mean it's terrible, it's actually a reasonably good knife, but it is the least good overall, and I think it's probably going to be worth something similar to what Bowie knives are in the Spectrum case. That's my guesstimate anyway. In any case, Sapphire Survivals look pretty good. I don't know why they wouldn't, they are sapphires after all, and the same can be said for rubies, again because they're rubies, of course they look good. The Black Pearl is interesting. With such a dark handle, it really makes the blade look purple. I don't know about you, but I think that's a real positive. I'm not so positive about the ordinary Dopplers though, they're kind of boring. Like, we've had so many of them already, I feel like these ones are just unnecessary. The Marble Fade at least is a much spiffier skin, it's definitely a lot more attention grabbing, and so is the Tiger Tooth, it goes really well with a black handle. Now, that leaves us with 3 more knives, and in all honesty, the Ultraviolet looks pretty good, as long as it's in good condition anyway. I think the Damascus Steel isn't too bad either, it goes well with a dark handle, it's not a bad combo, and that leaves one final skin, the Rust Coat, which I don't think even deserves a comment. Now, I like some of these knives. I like some of these knives a lot, and while I am sticking to my original plan and original video title, while I was making this video, I really did begin to think, do we need more knives in these finishes? Don't we have enough already? Is it time for new knife finishes. I mean, there's so many amazing concepts put out there by artists already. I mean, just look at these Wild Lotus knives that someone made, for example. And there's plenty of other finishes on the workshop. Like, there's options, there's been options for years. And I can't help but think that maybe we need something fresh. It's been almost 7 years since we last got new finishes. And while I think the knives in this video are the most likely next step, I also think we probably could do slightly better. And that truly would be mind-blowing. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe, massively appreciated. Otherwise, trust the numbers, not your guts. I'm Heyzeus. Thanks for watching. See ya.